Chicago, a misty early winter morning. On the 27th floor of the glass tower that housed Hale Capital's senior executives were preparing to sign the largest merger deal in the company's history. Outside the boardroom door stood Aurora James, a 22-year-old black woman in a janitor's coat. She held a trash bin and a cleaning cloth and paused silently at the threshold. Inside, the sound of pens poised to sign was about to echo through the room. Aurora spoke not loudly but clearly. The clause in Section 14B shifts all financial risk onto Hale Capital. If you sign, the company will bear legal liability if the deal collapses. The room went dead silent. Marcus Hale, the seasoned CEO of the firm, frowned. "Who are you?" Aurora took a deep breath. "Someone who read the truth hidden between the lines you all overlooked." 1 minute later, the pen froze mid-air. Security escorted Aurora out of the building. Just 12 hours earlier, Aurora was still a part-time janitor, working alongside her mother Lorraine on the top floor of Hale's headquarters. But she couldn't look away when she saw a stack of documents left behind in the printer, bearing the logo Raven Cross Holdings, a name her grandfather had once warned about in old financial broadcasts. She brought the stack home and read through it overnight, and she discovered a cleverly buried clause that shifted all legal consequences in the event of failure to Hale Capital. Raven Cross, the partner, would walk away clean if anything went wrong. The next morning, she put on her uniform and walked into the building with a single goal: to stop the fateful signing. She succeeded, but it also marked her as a person to watch. Aurora sat in the security waiting room, her hands trembling slightly from the cold and adrenaline. Her mother Lorraine had not spoken since they were summoned from the top floor. Only when the door opened did someone break the silence. A silver-haired woman in business attire stepped in. "I'm from Human Resources. Ms. James, you are suspended pending investigation for unauthorized entry into the executive area." Lorraine gripped her daughter's hand. "We didn't trespass. She just told the truth." "And she wasn't authorized to." Aurora lowered her head, but in her heart she knew the truth doesn't need permission. That night, in their small apartment on the city's south side, Aurora quietly reopened the backup copy of the documents before confiscating them. She photographed the faded sections, connected suspicious financial transfers, and discovered something else: Raven Cross wasn't acting alone. A web of shell companies stood behind it, tracing back to a private equity firm named Wolf Management. Aurora reopened her grandfather's old files, which he had once been a financial journalist, and found a 2007 report. Wolf Management was once suspected of money laundering through restructuring contracts. The case had disappeared not long after. She knew then she had stumbled into something much bigger. The next day, an email landed in Aurora's inbox. No sender, only a subject line: "You have no idea what you're touching. Walk away." Aurora didn't reply. She just took a screenshot and began building a data map. That map would one day become the starting point for a federal-level investigation. Just one sentence, 5 words, and Aurora Davis knew her life had just branched onto an entirely different path. When she was escorted out of the boardroom, she didn't cry. She didn't resist. She stood tall, eyes forward, as if everything was going according to plan. But her heart was pounding wildly, each beat slamming into her chest from the inside. A young security guard, Nate, who used to greet her every night as she mopped the ground floor lobby, padded beside her. He said nothing. When they reached the elevator, he looked at her through the scratched metal reflection, his gaze wavering. Then he whispered, "I think you just saved the whole company." Aurora didn't respond, not because she didn't want to, but because her throat was too dry to form words. Ground floor, internal security office. Her mother was seated, hands clasped tightly, and her back rigid like someone awaiting a verdict. When she saw Aurora enter, she didn't ask anything. She didn't have to. She just closed her eyes for a second, as if swallowing every scream inside her chest. A woman in a black suit, wearing a name badge from Human Resources, walked in. "Emily Williams, Aurora Davis, you are both suspended from your positions, indefinitely. pending internal investigation, no explanation, no expression on the woman's face. Just a short printed memo with no space for a signature. When they exited the building, the cold wind sliced against their faces. Aurora didn't wear a hat. She just walked, hand gripping her backpack strap tightly past the rows of glass doors she used to polish to a shine every night. She didn't look back. But her mother did. The third floor of the old apartment complex where the two had lived for the past 10 years had never been this quiet. The stew pot left on the stove burbled softly. A light flickered in the corner of the ceiling. In the middle of the tiny living room, Aurora sat curled up on a chair, her backpack still slung over her shoulder. Her mother stood behind her. She didn't yell. She didn't scold. She just sighed very quietly. "You don't understand how the world works, Aurora," her mother said, her voice steady as if she had rehearsed the words in front of a mirror. "You think just speaking the truth will make things better?" Aurora clenched her fists. "I couldn't let them sign it. If I stayed quiet, then at least I'd still have my job. You could go back to school. Maybe someday they'd even commend you for your honesty. But not like this. Not in the middle of a boardroom." Aurora bit her lip. She didn't say that if she could return in time, she would still do it the same way. Because the truth doesn't wait for a convenient moment to appear. 2 days later, an anonymous email arrived in Aurora's inbox. The subject line read only 3 words. "You saw it." She opened the message, heart thudding. Inside was a short note. "I used to work in the internal legal department. I know what you saw is real. And I have proof. If you want to continue, I'll help. Signed, R. Martinez." Aurora blinked. Martinez. The name was familiar. Very familiar. She searched her memory. She had once read a Securities and Exchange Commission report 2 years ago about an internal employee forced to resign after exposing that a corporation had hidden debt in a merger report. That person was Robert Martinez. Her heart pounded. She replied with only one line, "Meet me. Today, 6 p.m. South Park." The meeting occurred in a rundown cafe, the dim yellow light casting noir shadows across the peeling walls. Martinez showed up in a long coat, a beanie, and nothing in hand but a small USB drive. "I knew they'd deny it," he said. "I've seen these contracts before. There's someone like you every time, young enough not to be afraid, naive enough not to know they should be." Aurora smirked slightly. "I'm not naive. I know. You're dangerous. That's why I'm helping." He placed the USB on the table. Inside are files from 3 other mergers with nearly identical clauses. 2 companies collapsed. The third you already know. Aurora swallowed. She didn't need to ask. She had guessed it the moment she saw the contract, Lopez Capital. That night when Aurora got home, her mother was already asleep. She didn't turn on the lights. She sat on the floor, opened her laptop, plugged in the USB, and began reading. Page by page, line by line. She highlighted, annotated, and connected the dots. And in the stillness of the night, Aurora understood she had just stepped onto a chessboard where the first pawn had dared to march straight toward the queen, and she had no intention of backing down. The next morning, the Chicago sky was gray, like a blank page yet to be written. Aurora sat quietly on the balcony with a cup of cold coffee. Every car horn from below made her flinch, as if someone might knock on the door at any moment. But instead of silence, there was a message. From unknown number message, "You'd better stop." Just 5 words, no exclamation mark, no direct threat. But Aurora knew it carried more weight than any curse or insult. She picked up her phone, took a screenshot, and saved it. Then she messaged Martinez. "We need to meet again." They met at the nearly deserted Washington subway station. Martinez brought a folder which he claimed were copies of prior buried deals, internal emails, draft revisions of clauses, lists of employees who vanished from companies after speaking up. "You're touching something an entire system has spent years hiding," Martinez said, his voice low. "Aurora, if you keep going, you'll face more than a shady CEO and a sneaky clause. "I know," she replied, "and I'm not going alone." Martinez looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "There's one more person you need to meet. Victoria Chan." That name appeared in Martinez's notes, a former federal prosecutor, now a civil attorney specializing in whistleblower protection in high-stakes cases. Aurora arranged to meet her at an old bookstore on Clark Street, where they sat in a hidden back corner surrounded by the smell of aging pages and settled dust. "I've read your file," Victoria said, cutting straight to the point, "and I know what Martinez has. The question is, are you ready to go public?" Aurora looked her in the eyes. "If no one saw me when I scrubbed the floors, maybe they'll hear me when I speak the truth." Victoria's lips curled slightly, a half smile, half agreement. "Then starting today, you're no longer alone." Meanwhile, on the 30th floor of Jones Equity, Harper Jones sat in front of his monitor, hands trembling as he flipped through the contract pages Aurora had flagged. Every word, every comma, now carried new weight. He called in his head of legal, asked why no one had seen this. Silence. "Did any of us read every line?" he asked. No one answered. That evening, when Aurora came home, her mother sat on the couch with a tired look in her eyes. She didn't ask where Aurora had been. No scolding this time. She just said, "Someone from school called. They said you're a negative influence on the student body." Aurora froze. She hadn't returned to school since being suspended, but now they were coming after her record. "They're scared," she whispered, "so they're trying to silence me." Her mother looked at her for a long time. "Are you sure about this path? If not me, then who?" The next day, Victoria arranged for Aurora to meet with a team from the Department of Justice off the record. The meeting occurred in an empty conference room inside a neutral law firm. Aurora recounted how she discovered the clause and her path to Martinez. The evidence confirmed it. One agent asked, "Are you afraid?" Aurora replied, "Yes, but I'm more afraid of doing nothing." That night, Aurora found an unmarked envelope wedged under her apartment door. Inside was a photo of her and her mother walking out of the bookstore the day before. A handwritten note was attached. "Stop. Next time it won't just be a photo." This time her mother saw it too. Her face went pale. She said nothing, just gripped Aurora's hand tightly. "What do we do?" she asked. "We go all the way." Aurora gave everything to Victoria, and the attorney nodded with steel in her eyes for the first time. "Then we begin the counterattack." Monday. Victoria Chan's law office became the temporary base for an unnamed campaign. Aurora sat at the center of a long conference table, a secured laptop before her thick printed documents stacked high. The files Martinez had provided were 3 different mergers with the same formula liability dodging clauses, subsidiary companies forced to absorb losses, and clean exits for those who set the traps. "This isn't just legal negligence," Victoria said, pointing at Aurora's schematic. "This is organized behavior. A network." She circled 3 names in red ink: Clara Anderson, Lily Lopez, and a new one, Raven Cross Holdings. Aurora tilted her head. "What's this? A shell company, used to channel money from failed mergers. Accounts in Zurich, Cayman, and the British Virgin Islands." And she snapped her fingers. Her assistant handed her another printout. "A digital signature matches the one Olivia Anderson used 2 years ago." Aurora's heart skipped a beat. At the same time, high up in Jones Equity, Harper Jones bypassed assistants and IT directors, demanding direct access to internal archives. He'd trusted the wrong people once, there would not be a second time, and then he found it. An email from Lily Lopez to Olivia Anderson. Subject, Raven Cross ready. The body held just one line: "All we need is Harper's signature, the rest is handled." He didn't read further. He printed it, took it with him, and called for a car. That evening, Aurora and Victoria joined a secure call with federal investigators. Victoria led the session. Aurora was asked to testify as a key witness for the first time. "Why did I notice the clause? Because it didn't belong." The sentence was too polished. The language mirrored a merger from Texas 3 years ago. I wrote my thesis on it. Silence on the other end. Then a man's voice. Do you realize who you're going up against? Aurora stared into the screen, the laptop light reflected in her eyes like twin flames. I'm not up against anyone. I'm standing for the people no one stands with. Victoria cut in. We need witness protection, and we need access to Raven Cross's hidden financial records. The voice replied, to authorize that we need evidence of deliberate federal fraud. Victoria held a document up to the camera. Red circles marked 3 sections. Here, identical language was copied across contracts A, B, and C. They are the same beneficiaries, same money trail. What more do you need to call it intentional? The next day, Victoria took Aurora to meet a retired internal audit director who had once worked with Lopez Capital. He lived an hour outside Chicago. An older man with silver hair opened the door. When Victoria mentioned Raven Cross and Lopez, he didn't look surprised. He just shook his head. We knew, but no one wanted to touch it. Speaking up meant losing your job or worse. I had a family. Aurora asked, do you have any proof? He nodded, went inside, returned with an old yellowing tape-sealed file box. I kept a copy, just in case someone one day dared to do the right thing. Is today that day? Aurora replied, today's the beginning. That night, Harper Jones stood on the balcony of his luxury apartment holding the printed email from Olivia. Behind him, a small suitcase sat in the living room, not to flee, but to be ready to go all in. He called Victoria. I have something. She didn't just know. She orchestrated it. I want to testify. Victoria's voice was steady. Do you understand what that entails? Whatever it entails, as long as I don't keep living in the dark. Aurora received a call from Victoria at midnight. We have it. Enough to open a preliminary investigation, and if needed, there will be a hearing. Aurora lay on her bed, the ceiling spinning slowly above, but in her heart a rare calm. I'm ready, she said. Not for me, for the ones like my mother, the ones who never got a seat at the table. Across the city, Lily Lopez sat in an upscale restaurant raising a glass with Olivia Anderson. Neither knew that as they laughed, a case file with their names had just been submitted to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Subject line, Coordinated Financial Evasion and Fraud Scheme, submitted by Victoria Chan. Attached witness, Aurora Davis. Olivia Anderson's luxurious apartment no longer reflected the glittering lights of Chicago by night. Instead, it was drenched in shadows, illuminated only by the glow of a laptop screen sitting on a glass table. On it, an image of an email captured by Harper Jones showed a conversation between her and Lily Lopez. Olivia stared silently at the screen. A drop of red wine spilled over the rim of her glass and fell to the floor like a drop of blood. She knew the battle she thought she had controlled turned against her. Across the city, in a secure meeting room, inside a federal building, Victoria Chan slid a printed document across the table to a federal agent. Aurora Davis sat quietly beside her, eyes no longer hesitant but filled with resolve. Copy of the email, time-stamped, metadata included, and this. Victoria placed a financial statement beside it. Our 3 transactions matching the contract signing dates exactly when Raven Cross Holdings received the money. The agent nodded, eyes sharp. We'll launch a formal investigation, but if Anderson or Lopez has skilled attorneys, they'll deny everything. We need a confession or a crack in the wall. Aurora spoke up. I think I know how. 2 days later, at a small cafe near Union Station, Aurora sat alone, her phone on the table. In front of her was a cold coffee and a brown envelope marked urgent. The door opened. Olivia Anderson entered wearing a beige coat and sunglasses that concealed half her face. She said nothing, just pulled out a chair and sat down. Aurora slid the envelope forward. I'm not here to blackmail you. I'm here to offer you a chance. Olivia scoffed. What kind of chance comes from a cleaning girl? Aurora didn't flinch. A chance to stop before it's too late. I have everything: the emails, the wire transfers, the account verifications in the British Virgin Islands, and the person behind Raven Cross. Lily won't let you walk away, Olivia said, her voice low. Lily will be facing an indictment that is pages long. I have nothing to lose. But you do. Olivia was silent for a long time. Then she picked up the envelope and stood. I'll think about it, Aurora called after her. Don't think too long. Silence is a choice too, and its cost won't be light. That night, Olivia sat alone in her bedroom. She opened the envelope. Inside was more than just evidence. There was a handwritten letter in elegant slanted script. Maybe you think I'm just a 22-year-old girl who knows nothing about law or finance. But I know what betrayal looks like. I saw it in my mother's eyes every time she had to beg for an extra shift. When I looked in the mirror, I saw it in my eyes and wondered why the people who caused the pain always walked free. If you still know how to be afraid, do what's right. She clenched the paper. And for the first time in years, Olivia Anderson's eyes welled with tears. The next morning, Harper Jones received a call. On the other end, Olivia. I'll testify, but I want protection and immunity. That's not my call to make, Harper replied, but I can take you to someone who can. 3 days later, Olivia Anderson walked into the federal prosecutor's office, accompanied by 2 agents. She sat before a recording device, voice even and cold. I was the middleman, but I knew the plan. Lily Lopez founded Raven Cross. My role was to ensure Harper Jones never found out. I received 2% from each deal. When the recording ended, Aurora was summoned. She said nothing, only looked at Olivia for a few seconds. There was no anger, just truth, raw and explicit. At a sudden press conference, Victoria Chan confirmed, we now have an insider witness. The case officially expands today to include conspiracy to defraud and asset concealment. Lily Lopez's name appeared on the evening news that same day. Across town, Lily shattered a wine glass upon hearing the report. She flipped, she growled. That girl doesn't know what she's messing with. She grabbed her phone, but this time no one picked up, and that's when she realized it can never be restored once silence is broken. The next morning, Chicago's sky wore a thin layer of clouds, as if the city was holding its breath, waiting for something to explode. Aurora Davis sat in Harper Jones's office, softly illuminating her face, not the light of someone on the margins, but someone about to rewrite the rules. Before her was a white wall map cluttered with arrows, connections, code names, and images at the center. Raven Cross Holdings is circled in bold red and stands out like a poisoned heart, pumping wrong blood through an entire system. Victoria Chan entered holding a thick file. New intel, we've traced another wire transfer through Zurich under the name of a fake scholarship fund and authorized by Clara Jennings, an alias of Lily Lopez. Aurora bit her lip. So she's got a full identity network to run this whole thing. Victoria nodded. And we need to tie those identities to the collapses of 3 former companies, Kinvara Corp, Helix Systems, and Northrise Analytics. Each went under shortly after a partnership with Raven Cross. Harper added, we need a thread to tear away the final disguise. Aurora opened her laptop, typing quickly. She had thought about it all night. There's one way, but we need access to Helix Systems' old servers. A backup was deleted from public access, but I have a lead. Aurora and Victoria arrived at an off-site data archive in suburban Chicago 2 days later. A metal door opened into rows of chilled storage drives. The night shift attendant, a gray-haired man, looked from Victoria to Aurora. You are the last person willing to look at a drive everyone's too scared to touch, Aurora replied calmly. Drive number 4491 marked the year Helix Systems died. When the server connected, the screen lit up with an old interface. Aurora sifted through folders, pausing at one labeled Plan B. Clara Lilly contingency. She opened it. Inside was a strategy map, funds transferred from Hale Investments to shell entities to Raven Cross, then out of the country. The final line read, "If discovered, trigger fallback plan to blame CFO." Clara knows what to sign. Victoria fell silent. They didn't just manipulate the system, they built a scapegoat. Aurora whispered, and this time, that scapegoat is Harper. As they left the facility, it was raining. Victoria drove while Aurora remained quiet. Each raindrop against the windshield felt like a warning they were closing in on the heart of a rotting power. Back at the office, Harper Jones was waiting. "Bad news. Clara or Lily flew to Washington this morning. She's planning her escape." "Not if we cut her off first," Aurora replied. She opened her laptop and sent the data copies to two recipients, the FBI and the press. "If she runs, at least she'll run in the spotlight." Victoria smiled. "There's nowhere left to hide." That night, the news delivered a shockwave. Chicago's largest financial scandal of the decade, network of shell companies exposed. Aurora stood in her mother's small living room, watching the reporter's voice overlay images that had become all too familiar. Hale's office, Raven Cross documents, and her photo. Emily, Aurora's mother, sat quietly holding a teacup tightly. "You did what no boardroom full of executives dared." Aurora stood still. But in her eyes there wasn't only pride, but relief. A final door had just opened. The darkness was no longer behind Aurora. It now lurked at her side. She was no longer invisible. Now she was the target. When Aurora returned to her small apartment that night, the hallway lights flickered oddly. She strolled, eyes fixed on the shadows. As she inserted her key into the lock, she noticed something strange. The lock had been tampered with, as if someone had tried to break in. She stepped back, heart pounding, and pulled out her phone. She called Victoria. "Someone just tried to get into my apartment," she whispered. "I don't think this is just a light warning anymore." Victoria immediately sent help. Within 30 minutes, two licensed federal civil security officers arrived. They inspected the door and hallway cameras and retrieved a blurry video. A tall figure in a hood lingered in front of Aurora's door, fidgeting for about a minute, then vanished. "Not a thief," one guard said. "This is a message." Victoria showed up early the next morning. She brought Aurora to a secret location, a small office above an old Italian cafe with no signage. "From now on, you work from here, and don't go back home for now." Aurora nodded. She knew the game had changed. Meanwhile, in an upscale part of Washington, Clara Jennings, also known as Lily Lopez, was meeting a nameless man. They exchanged a file folder. "Aurora is getting too close," Clara said, her voice no longer calm. "If we don't act, the whole plan will collapse." "What do you want me to do?" the man asked. "Cut her off. Data witnesses and even legal counsel if necessary. We must erase her from the media before she sets foot in court." The man nodded. "I know some people who specialize in this kind of thing." Aurora and Harper sat in the secret room in Chicago reviewing the data map. "We need a direct hit. A blow they can't erase or counter," Harper said. Aurora nodded. "And we need it before the hearings begin." Victoria opened her laptop. "There's someone no one's mentioned yet, the former in-house lawyer for Vaughan Global. He was the last to sign off on all the contracts, but disappeared from the industry 3 years ago. If we find him, we might have a living witness." Aurora finished. "What's his name? Mason Carter. I'll find him." But Clara and her allies were one step ahead. When Victoria traced Mason to a small town in Oregon, they found his house had been broken into. Mason managed to escape, but left all his documents behind. A day later, he called Aurora directly. "I used to think signing my name was harmless, but now I know it can destroy a city. Send me a meeting point and I'll tell you everything." Aurora glanced at Harper. "If he shows up in court with us," Harper whispered, "this isn't just a case anymore. It's a declaration of war." The first morning Aurora met Mason Carter was unannounced. They sat across from each other in a small diner outside Des Moines. He had the weathered look of someone who had lived too long in the shadows, but his eyes still held fire. "People think I disappeared to hide," Mason began, voice even. "But I left because I knew I'd signed something that would murder my conscience." Aurora didn't interrupt. She let him speak. The recorder hummed quietly. Mason opened a battered briefcase and pulled out a worn bundle of papers. "This is the unedited draft, the first contract Vaughan Global ever used to start the partnerships. I kept it because I needed a reason to remember I once betrayed justice." Victoria Chan, sitting beside Aurora, nodded slowly. "Are you willing to testify in court?" Mason looked up. "If this young woman," he glanced at Aurora, "can stand up while the whole system tries to crush her, then I can do my part." News of the new witness spread through Aurora's team like wildfire. Harper opened her laptop and checked Mason's testimony with Raven Cross's data. The astonishing results, nearly every word he spoke, could be verified through emails, contract files, and transfer records. "This is the final piece of the map," Aurora said, quietly but firmly. But the other side wasn't sitting still. Clara Jennings snapped a matchstick in a five-star hotel and watched it burn in a luxury suite atop a five-star hotel. "They found Mason," she said. Derek Vaughan stood nearby, arms crossed. "We need to act now. Do we have anyone inside federal court?" Derek pulled out a burner phone, a contact in the records department. "If we can't stop the trial, we can at least delay it." At the temporary HQ, Aurora received an email from an unknown address. No subject, no text, just an attachment. She opened it, a doctored version of Mason Carter's law license. In bold read, "Not eligible to testify." Aurora frowned. "They're starting a smear campaign." Victoria nodded. "We must go public before they take control of the narrative." The next day, Harper live-streamed a short interview with Mason, 3 minutes concise and clear. In it, Mason confirmed his role, the existence of the contracts, and why he left the legal profession. The video went viral. On Twitter, Mason Carter trended rapidly. Media outlets began asking, "Who's really behind Raven Cross?" Clara was livid. In a closed meeting with her legal team, she slammed the table. "Why are we letting them control the story?" An older lawyer spoke up. "Because we've lost control of the source for the first time in a decade. And because of that girl," Clara gritted her teeth, "Aurora." That evening, Aurora returned to her new lodging. She opened the door, set down her bag, and powered on her laptop. A new email awaited her from an investigative journalist at the Chicago Times. "I'm writing a feature piece, The Woman Who Shifted the System. I want to interview you." Aurora looked at the subject line, then gave a faint smile. She didn't crave fame, she wanted justice. But if her voice could carry further, she'd use it. She typed back, "Meet me at the courthouse Monday. I won't hide in the shadows." Victoria Chan ended the internal meeting with a sharp statement. "We have 3 days. They'll do everything to delay us, but if we hold steady, we can bring this case to court." Harper nodded, "And when that happens, there's no turning back." Aurora stood up. Her eyes no longer held the look of a janitor. They burned with the fire of a woman about to rewrite the rules. "No turning back," she said, "only the right way forward." The morning of the first hearing, the air outside the Federal Court of Chicago was thick with camera clicks, murmurs, and skeptical glances. Aurora stepped out of the car, wearing a simple black suit, her hair tied neatly in a high ponytail. Her steps rang like a bell against the conscience of a system that had long ignored the truth. Victoria Chan walked beside her, carrying 2 briefcases filled with hundreds of pages of evidence, bank statements, witness testimonies, and audio recordings, all organized like a battlefield map. Harper followed silently behind earbuds, in monitoring internal signals in case of tampering with the court's electronic files. The courtroom doors opened. A large, cold and silent space loomed ahead. Across the room sat Derek Vaughan in a charcoal suit, his chin slightly raised, his eyes still dripping with arrogance. Beside him, Clara Jennings was cold, elegant, and poised like a blade wrapped in velvet. Aurora took a seat at the witness bench, silently surveying the room. Every chair and wooden panel symbolized a system she once believed she would never have the strength to step inside. The trial began. Judge Marquez, known for his toughness and zero tolerance, entered. The entire room rose. The air seemed to vanish. Victoria opened with a concise presentation, tracing Aurora's journey from discovering a minor contract error to uncovering an international network of money laundering and financial manipulation. "No one asked her to do this," Victoria said. "She wasn't a lawyer, a shareholder, or an official employee, and yet that's exactly why she saw what no one else did: the truth." The evidence was presented in parts: Mason Carter's testimony, original contracts audio of Clara and Derek discussing how to bury Jackson Hale, and financial transactions from shell accounts under Ravencross Holdings. Then came Aurora's turn. Victoria called her to the stand. "Ms. Williams," Victoria's voice was calm, "can you recount the first moment you noticed something strange?" Aurora nodded. "I found the contract left on the photocopier while cleaning the office. I was about to ignore it, but then I saw a strange clause. The liability was transferred entirely to Hale. I'd never seen that in any standard contract before." "And who did you report it to?" Aurora took a breath. "I wasn't allowed to speak to anyone, so I walked into the meeting room and said it out loud." Victoria paused. "Were you afraid?" "Of course," Aurora replied, "but I was more afraid of staying silent." The defense attorneys began their cross-examination. They questioned Aurora's education qualifications and even her motives. "The name is Hale Ethics Trust, which is the fund Aurora has contracts with." Aurora smiled slightly. "No, but I know when something's wrong. I saw the signs, and then I found someone who confirmed them." Another lawyer asked, "Do you have a motive?" "Were you paid, seeking fame?" Aurora answered firmly. "I just want people to know that wearing an apron doesn't mean you're blind." Other witnesses followed: financial analysts who verified the irregular transfers to tax havens. Mason Carter took the stand, his voice raspy but steady. "I once helped Derek Vaughan legitimize dirty contracts, but I can't live another day with that burden." A heavy blow to the defense. Finally, Clara Jennings was called up. In a pale grey dress and neatly tied hair, she looked like a judge misplaced in a movie. But when the audio played, her voice saying, "If he doubts, remind him of the price," everything collapsed. Clara bit her lip. She stayed silent for a long moment, then said, "I didn't think that girl would dare come this far." The courtroom froze momentarily, not because of a direct confession, but because the truth could no longer be denied. By day's end, the judge announced a 3-day recess for the jury to deliberate. Outside, rain began to fall. Aurora stood under the awning, staring at the line of cars beneath dim streetlights. Victoria stepped beside her, handing her an umbrella. "You did well. No matter what happens next, you made the system listen." Aurora said nothing, but inside she knew this was no longer one person's fight. It began a new value system where titles don't measure courage, but by whose voice endures the storm. 3 days passed like centuries. Aurora couldn't sleep. She sat in her small apartment staring at the city lights through foggy windows. The old TV replayed coverage of the trial of her, the girl who dared to take down an empire. Victoria Chan called at 6 a.m. on the third day. "The jury has a verdict, 10 a.m. Courtroom 12B. Aurora nodded, though Victoria couldn't see her. "I'll be there." By the time she arrived, crowds had already lined the courthouse steps. Media swarmed like bees. Her name appeared on banners, hashtags, and even hand-painted signs: "Aurora for truth," and "Justice has a voice now." The courtroom doors opened. The atmosphere was heavy. Clara Jennings sat silently, lips tight, gaze distant. Derek Vaughan smiled smugly, as if the verdict had already been bought. Judge Marquez entered. The jury followed, solemn, avoiding eye contact. The court clerk read, "In federal case 457H, United States, v. Clara Jennings and Derek Vaughan, the jury will now deliver the verdict." Aurora gripped her mother's hand. Her mother's eyes brimmed with tears, but none fell. The jury four-person stood voice clear as a bell on the charge of conspiracy to commit financial fraud, guilty. On the charge of market manipulation, guilty. On the charge of witness intimidation and abuse of power, guilty. A ripple of shock rolled through the courtroom. Derek Vaughan remained still, jaw clenched. Clara Jennings broke into tears. The judge wasted no time. This court sentences each defendant to 12 years in federal prison with no parole for the first 8. All assets connected to Ravencross Holdings are hereby frozen. Victoria exhaled. Aurora couldn't speak. The emotions were too vast for any cheer or nod to convey. Outside, Aurora was swarmed by reporters. Questions flew, but she picked just one mic and said justice doesn't ask about skin color, titles, or background. It only demands someone brave enough to speak when all others fall silent. That night, Aurora returned home quietly. She set down her phone, removed her heels, and sat on the wooden chair by the window. Her mother approached and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did what no one thought possible." Aurora smiled softly. "I just started with a misprinted page." The next day, a press conference was held at the new headquarters of Hale Investments, which is now undergoing complete restructuring. On stage, Jackson Hale declared, "We will not let the old system live another day. From today, Hale will operate on transparency, fairness, and accountability principles. And the one who started it all is Aurora Williams." He handed her an envelope, a full scholarship, a special training program, and an ethical strategy advisory board seat. The audience rose in applause. Aurora stepped up to the podium and moved, but steadily. "I used to mop floors. Now I stand here, not because I'm better than anyone, but because I didn't look away when I saw something wrong. I hope one day that won't be the exception." That night in her small bedroom, Aurora opened her laptop. A new email popped up from an anonymous sender. Just one line: "Truth is never finished. There's more. Keep going." She closed her eyes. 1 second. Then I created a new folder, Case 02. The early winter wind pierced through the glass of Aurora's apartment as she sat flipping through files. Under the desk lamp, she carefully reviewed what remained of Barnes's documents, an incomplete financial map and signs of offshore investments yet to be traced. Victoria Chan knocked softly and entered, carrying 2 steaming cups of coffee. "You understand what that email yesterday meant, right?" she asked. Aurora nodded, her eyes never leaving the money trail diagram. "Someone's warning us," she whispered. "Another case, linked to the same network. Possibly a higher level." Victoria set the cup down. "Or it's a trap." Aurora smiled faintly. "The first time I walked into their trap, they didn't think I could read." Life after the trial hadn't been easy. The media called Aurora a hero. But outside the headlines, not everyone saw her that way. Some admired her quietly, others were skeptical. New adversaries emerged, more discreet, more polished, and more dangerous. A week after receiving her scholarship from Hale Investments, Aurora discovered her bank card had been deactivated. Her account was frozen due to a legal inquiry. When she called the bank, they were polite yet cold. "We are not authorized to disclose the origin of the directive." She knew then this wasn't a technical issue. That evening, 3 men sat around a marble table in another apartment in the South Loop. One of them, Victor Blaine, wore an unbranded suit, slowly stroking a fountain pen. "She's gone further than the original target," he said, "and now kids get applauded for causing disruption." Another man with salt and pepper hair nodded. "We lost Clara and Vaughan, but we've got dozens of other projects. If she touches Raven Asia or the Swiss branch," Victor cut him off, his voice like ice, "she'll disappear, but not too soon. A tarnished symbol makes more noise than a buried one." Aurora didn't know Victor's name, but she began to notice signs. Her computer slowed down strangely. Her door camera glitched, and a black SUV had parked near her building 3 nights in a row. Her mother worried. "We should leave." Aurora shook her head. If I run, they win. 3 days later, a courier knocked at her door. The package was tightly sealed with no sender. Inside was a hard drive and a handwritten note: "Trust no one, not even Hale." Aurora called Victoria. They opened the drive in a secure room under anti-intrusion surveillance. The data stunned them: a recording of a meeting between former Hale Investments executives and Raven Cross Asia partners. A woman's voice, not Clara's, was heard planning to use Aurora's name as PR bait to attract ethical investors. A beautiful pawn, if we keep her quiet. Aurora clenched her jaw. Victoria shut her laptop. "We're up against our own now. This won't be as clean as the last time." Aurora stared out the window. "Then this time, we fight dirty." She opened her laptop and began writing an email. Not to the press, not to the authorities, but to a former hacker who had once exposed a crypto laundering ring, someone Aurora had saved from prosecution with a single testimony. The email address had only 3 characters: NX9. She typed, "I need what only you can do. I don't need you to expose them. I need the truth to leak at the right time." 3 days later, an anonymous blog post appeared on the darknet. No author, just a sequence of internal records transfers offshore accounts in Panama, Cayman, and Macau. The name is Hale Ethics Trust, the fund Aurora recently joined. The news spread fast. Media began asking, was Aurora also a pawn of the system she once exposed? She received an anonymous message: "People will believe anything if it makes them feel less guilty." Victoria called. "They're using your name to protect themselves. It's time to speak up." Aurora nodded. And this time, no courtroom, just the light. She knew that if she spoke now, doors would close, not just those of the manipulators, but also of former supporters. But silence now would mean complicity. And she had never made peace with darkness. The next morning, she arrived at an independent media platform unaffiliated with major conglomerates which had previously reported fairly on the Clara scandal. She met the editor-in-chief and requested broadcast a live statement. The editor, a silver-haired woman in her 40s, looked at her thoughtfully. "If you're sure, we won't stop you." Aurora nodded. "It's not for me. It's for those who come after me." At noon, the live stream began. Aurora sat alone before the camera, no backdrop slogans or clip-on mic, just her razor-sharp gaze and calm, steady voice. "My name is Aurora James. I'm 22. A year ago, I helped stop a toxic merger. I thought I had done my duty, but no, I had only scratched the surface." She paused, looking directly into the lens. "I've uncovered accounts hiding profits from 3 companies that collapsed after the trial. They didn't dissolve naturally, they were manipulated from the inside, and I was offered the role of a symbol to cover it all up." Her hand moved gently to the file in front of her. "In my hands is proof of a network law enforcement has yet to dare confront. But I can't wait any longer." The broadcast spread like wildfire. The hashtag #AurораSpeaks topped trend charts. Within 4 hours, over 12 million views. In the glass offices of Raven Cross Asia, phones rang off the hook. Victor Blaine slammed a glass onto the floor. "She just shot herself in the head." An advisor winced. "No, she pulled the trigger on our ammo." Aurora didn't return home. She knew it was too dangerous. Instead, she and Victoria moved into a temporary apartment under a fake name. They continued analyzing files. NX9 kept sending new data, such as a relationship map linking funds, law firms, and several international officials. "There's a name here from the European Investment Union," Victoria whispered. Aurora didn't flinch. Financial crime doesn't have a nationality. It has interests. That night, Aurora got a message: "We need to meet, urgent." The sender, Ryan Talbot, a former senior associate of Clara, who had vanished after the lawsuit. They arranged to meet at an abandoned church on the city's west side. Aurora arrived with Victoria, always careful. Ryan stepped from the shadows thinner but with sharp eyes. He handed over a thick envelope. Copies of contracts hiring Raven as financial oversight for at least 6 public funds, with signatures from current Hale executives. Aurora scanned them. One name hit her: Graham Wolfe, who once vowed to clean out the remnants. Victoria's tone dropped. So the battle this time is within Hale. Ryan nodded. And you've only got one shot for a decisive blow. Aurora looked up, eyes unshaken. Then let's make it thunder. That night, she contacted a team of international investigative journalists who helped expose the Panama tax scandal. She didn't send documents, she offered a name: Wolfe. The first investigation dropped 3 days later. From symbol of renewal to shadow broker, is Hale clean? In denial, Graham Wolfe held a press conference, but the public reaction was skeptical. No one believed PR smiles anymore. The next day, NX9 messaged Aurora, "They won't sue. They'll strike. Your mother is your weakness. Be careful." Aurora read it and typed back immediately. Then this time, I strike first. Aurora didn't just resist, she retaliated. In the temporary apartment, the blue light from the laptop screen cast shadows across her tired yet unyielding face. Victoria Chan sat across from her phone pressed tightly to her ear, her voice low and urgent. "The Department of Justice won't move unless we have direct proof Wolfe authorized the laundering." Aurora typed rapidly. NX9, the anonymous source, had just sent a video clip, hidden camera footage, of a secret meeting between Wolfe and 2 Luxembourg investors. In it, Wolfe said, "Push the losses to the subsidiary, then bury it in the internal audit report. No one will trace it." He chuckled, calm and composed. Victoria pushed her chair back, standing up. "This is a dagger. But to pierce the heart, we need a real blade, a living witness." Aurora glanced at the wall map, a web of connections between bank accounts, payments, and shell entities. At the center is a red circle around the name Elias Denton, former internal accounting director of Raven Cross, missing for 2 years. "I know who can find him," Aurora said. "My brother." A former financial intelligence agent, Aurora James, is now an anonymous cybersecurity specialist. Aurora sent an encrypted message. Within an hour, Andre replied, "He's in Belize under an alias. I have the address. But you'll have to go. Face to face." Victoria stiffened. "It's dangerous. You just shook the nest. Now you want to walk into the snake pit." "The more dangerous it seems, the less they'll expect it," Aurora replied. "And he'll only speak if he sees someone bold enough." Belize. Hot, humid, chaotic. Aurora stepped out of a rusted taxi, her thin jacket damp with sweat, her grip firm on the folder in her hand. Elias Denton lived in a wooden house near the forest, reclusive, suspicious shoulders hunched like he carried a mountain of guilt. "You know who I am. That's reason enough not to open the door," he said behind the curtain. Aurora didn't avert her gaze. "But I know something you never spoke of, and I won't repeat it. I only need one thing: your confirmation that the voice in the video is Wolfe's." Silence, then the sound of a lock turning. He opened the door, his eyes sunken with memory. Within 3 hours, Elias signed an internationally notarized affidavit and provided a recorded statement. "Wolfe directed every deceptive financial restructuring. I executed them. But he designed them." Aurora sent all files to Chicago. Victoria immediately contacted the Department of Justice. Within 24 hours, a temporary arrest warrant for Wolfe was issued. Simultaneously, a group of independent journalists released the secret meeting video. The press dubbed it the Nixon tape of finance. Wolfe was escorted out of Hale's headquarters. Aurora stood 2 blocks away, and she didn't celebrate. She watched, but she knew she had just toppled the king-piece. Yet she also understood that the remaining knights become more vicious when the king falls. 3 days later, Aurora discovered the security system in her temporary apartment had been hacked. Her mother received a fake school email embedded with spyware. The attacks were no longer financial. They were informational. Victoria warned we could lose control at any moment. Aurora responded, then we need to finish this before they can regroup. On September 28th, an extraordinary congressional hearing was convened. Aurora was invited as an honorary witness. The crowd applauded as she entered the room, hair tied back in a black suit and with unwavering eyes. She spoke of shady contracts, untouchable names, and a straightforward belief a nation cannot stand if justice kneels behind wealth. At the end, the committee chair placed his hand on the thick dossier Aurora submitted. You chose not to stay silent, and because of that, we are obligated to listen. 3 weeks later, Ravencross Holdings had all accounts frozen. 3 senior directors were indicted. A new bill dubbed the Aurora Act was introduced banning all financial firms with histories of manipulation from managing public funds for 15 years. Aurora was no longer the forgotten girl in a glass elevator. She was the one who lit that elevator on fire. That evening, she sat on the balcony of her old apartment, where she and her mother used to drink ginger tea on winter nights. Her mother stepped out, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder. Not everyone dares to set the board on fire. But you did. Aurora smiled. Because I know, even pawns can become queens if they move far enough.